Howdy, y'all.
Welcome back to the Grace Prep Podcast. My name is Joshua Young.
I'm Hattie Lord.
I'm Mrs. Melott, a teacher at Grace Preparatory Academy of New Braunfels.
And I'm Scott Melott, and I am married to Jessica Melott, teacher here at Grace Prep Academy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We're so glad to have you here today. Whenever I think of Scott Melott, what immediately comes to mind is Bonnie and Mads last year dressing. Bonnie is Mrs. Melott's daughter, for listeners. Dressing as Mr. Melott.
Yes.
And all day walking around going, I'm Scott Melott, and shaking people's hands.
And I'm pretty sure they also wore hats.
Oh,
like Mr.
right.
Melott has on right now.
Yep.
Do you remember the story as to why they called themselves Scott Melott?
I don't remember.
Okay, so once upon a time, I'm also the student council advisor at Grace Preparatory Academy of New Braunfels, and Mr. Melott was also in student council when he was in high school. And once upon a time, Bonnie found a card that said, "Vote Scott Melott."
Now I remember.
Now you remember, yes. And ironically enough, Mad's middle name is Scott.
Oh.
What?
And yes, so Madeline Scott Kruger is her name. And so they just thought it was really funny that they could call themselves Scott Melott.
Oh, I get it.
So that's what it is.
That's funny.
Yes,
That's
vote
so
Scott
good.
Melott. I mean, they when they ran for student council president and vice president, it was vote Scott Melott, and they used this thing from the '80s that Mr. Melott had that was a little card that said vote Scott Melott.
I thought
That's
they
hilarious.
were just making fun of me.
They weren't. They were they were honoring you.
They were honoring you. I mean, did they win, I think?
Yeah, they won. They won.
Wow. Very
That's
nice.
fun.
Very nice. Well, before we go any further, quick word from our sponsor, Two Rivers.
If you're like me and you love sipping on a good coffee under a disco ball in an upbeat atmosphere, Two Rivers is your new place. It's down the road from New Braunfels High School. Just pop in to experience the vibes and taste some of the best coffee in Texas. In a world full of fast and convenient coffee, Two Rivers is set apart by their unwavering dedication to quality. They set the bar high with their scratch kitchen and use of real ingredient, just delicious syrups. Go grab a cup, meet a friend, or just have a study session and enjoy the vibes. Two Rivers Coffee is more than just a coffee shop. It is an experience.
Okay, well, let's start kind of like towards the beginning of y'all. Like, when did y'all meet and how?
Okay, so this is a fun story. So do you guys know where Fry Hat Country Store
Yes.
is? Okay, so once upon a time, back in the 1990s, last century, their Fry Hat Country Store used to be in the middle of nowhere. But they did host live music every week. And so my uncle's a musician in town, and so my mom and I would go see the bands because my uncle was kind of the MC. So we'd go see music, and once upon a time, this band called the Groobies, they were playing, and Mr. Melott was a part of the Groobies. So I was a Groobies groupie.
A groupie.
Wow.
A Groobies groupie.
Wow.
Wait, how do you spell that?
Groobees.
Oh,
Okay.
groupies. That's
Okay.
fun.
Interesting. How did
Okay, yeah.
How did you come with that name?
I don't know. It's silly. I think it was a cartoon character from like the 50s.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Right on.
Gumby and Pokey was a cartoon series that you guys are probably.
Gumby? I know
I've
Gumby.
never heard
the
Gumby.
green
Okay,
guy?
yeah, the little green guy. Yeah, this was a little minor character in Gumby and Pokey.
Okay, very nice.
That's funny.
Very
Okay,
nice.
how did you find yourself in a band? When and why?
So I grew up in Oklahoma. Went to right out of high school. I thought I was going to go into journalism, and after about 3 semesters at the University of Oklahoma, like I'm starting to play some music, and took a little break to see if I could pursue that and actually see if I could make a living at that. So. Moved to Amarillo, Texas, and got together with this group called the Groobies. Formed this group called the Groobies, and we probably from '97 to about 2001. That was my full-time job. Was just kind of traveling the states and playing music. So.
That's so cool.
Okay.
So this particular show that they were doing at Fry Hat Country Store, he was in a band with a girl who had a song that she had written that was very famous at the time called Wide Open Spaces.
I love it.
And the Dixie Chicks had made it famous, which is the reason I really wanted to go see the band, because I was a 24-year-old young woman, and Wide Open Spaces was like the song, right? So I loved the song, and the girl in her band, the girl who wrote the song and her band, were going to be at Fry Hat Country Store.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So that's why I was there.
That's so cool.
Very cool. So sounds like from all the sources I've talked to, all the people, you are a businessman, right? Little entrepreneurial,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Okay. Could you share a little bit about that? What that looks like for you?
Sure. So I've always liked the idea of being a business owner and being my own boss. I would have to say that most entrepreneurs are a little more bigger risk takers than I am. I'm a little risk averse, but I work with my partner. His name is Vince Kegley, and he's kind of the other side of that. He's a risk taker. He loves ideas, always thinking of ideas, and he usually brings me along as kind of someone who will, hey, I've got this idea. And he'll kind of roll out the different thoughts, and I'll just say, that's dumb. We're not gonna do that. Or that's a great idea. Let's give this a try. And so that's typically how it has worked for me in the past. Although as I look back over my life, being a musician, that's kind of entrepreneurial. I opened a coffee shop back in the mid '90s, kind of before coffee shops were a big thing up in Amarillo, Texas, because I thought this will be a way I can. It's a cool place to play music, and I can make a little bit of money. So I guess along the way, I've always had a little bit of that mindset.
Where do you think that came from? Like,
probably my dad. So my dad I loved my dad. He was a dreamer. He always had ideas for businesses and always wanted to do things. I didn't probably pursue it as much, but I'm sure I got that from him.
Oh, so where does the risk averse come from?
Probably my mom. Yeah, she's kind of
steady.
Steady, yeah,
So steady.
she is so
Awesome.
steady, and so I think I have a good balance of both of them. But I don't know that I would make some of the leaps that I've made in business were it not for my business partner, because he's the one who we got to try this, and so appreciative of that.
So where are you and Mr. Kegley partnered in?
So currently, and for the last 5 years, we are in a scent marketing company. We founded this back in 2019, and so we help dictate how places smell, help them find a signature scent. So if you go into a nice hotel or apartment community or
Grace Preparatory Academy.
Yeah, that's why the gathering place smells a little less like sweat.
yeah. So that's been and it's been wonderful. So prior to that, I had worked for a company in marketing, more digital marketing, online websites, things like that. Okay. And working for another company, it was fine, but it kind of helped me develop some of the skill sets needed for going out and trying to grow a business. And so we've been doing that for a while, and God has really been blessing it, and it's fantastic, and I love doing it, and I have a lot of job joy, so it's great.
Tell us some things that you've done with your partner before that maybe y'all learned
that maybe didn't work as well.
Sure. that brought you to where you are.
I don't know what they say, what the stats are. It's like 1 out of every 9 or 10 business ideas actually work, So, but we started off with buying and selling guitars. Early on, that was the first venture that we got in together. You remember that?
No, barely.
And then we did a trash can cleaning company around New Braunfels. Introduced the idea to New Braunfels. It was eventually purchased, and there's someone else doing it. But so we had that for a little while. We tried. I thought this was a really good idea, but we tried a subscription box for young business professional men. So we would load it up with shoe shiners or, maybe interesting. Like if you're on the road, either a salesperson or a business professional, we would have healthy snacks, or we would have car adapters that you wouldn't, things that God, this, why didn't I think of this? This is really cool. And so we would package these in a box. People would subscribe and we'd send them out. And then after about 3 months of doing that, we're like, what else can we put in here? It's kind of started running out of ideas. And so we left that, kind of let that one go, and then.
So did you have anybody already purchasing subscriptions for that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we had a few clients, but it wasn't a ton, and it was one of those things where. Some of our best ideas were right out of the gate, and when we didn't have a whole lot of clients, if someone's subscribing, they don't want to get the same thing
over and over again.
So it it was a good idea. The execution and really when you start thinking it through, it's like, yeah, maybe it wasn't quite as.
There's not a whole lot you can put in one box.
At some point, you run out of things.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah.
On a monthly basis.
Well, what year was that?
For what, the subscription
The
box?
subscription box.
That would have been probably early 2019, maybe 2018.
So that's recent.
Fairly recent. Yeah, because that was
Okay.
after that. It was when Vince came to me with the idea of scent marketing.
So were you doing those with Mr. Vince
Yes,
before?
yeah, everything, all of these ideas
Aw.
were, yeah.
So not just business partners, but like best friends.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, best friends and family friends and play music together at church. And
How long have y'all known each other?
we've known each other for 19 years.
19,
years?
almost 19 years.
And the Melotts and the Kegleys have known my parents for
Same
forever.
amount. Yes.
Yeah, we call ourselves the Maleglies.
We have our
Lots
name
of
for
the
ourselves.
Kegleys.
I
Yes.
didn't.
Yes. We have our own name.
How
Yes.
cute.
So the scent business I've never heard of that. Literally, that's like brand new to me. How did what's his name again?
Vince.
How did Vince come up with that?
So he has been in kind of guest experience marketing for a long time. So while I was doing online marketing, he was doing. If you ever call someplace and you get put on hold and you hear a message, thank you for calling.
These kids don't call anybody. No one calls.
I've called.
Okay. Back when we used to call people,
Exactly.
you would if you got put on hold.
days.
When you get put on hold, there would be messages that might say, "Hey, it's if you call a doctor's office, hey, it's flu season. Have you gotten your shot?" Or you call, so that they kind of there's some branding involved.
Yeah.
So he's done that for a long time, 25 plus years.
Okay.
Scent marketing, I think, is just an extension of guest
that.
experience. So I've always come from the ROI, return on investment side of marketing, where I want to be able to prove value and like, okay, if you give me X amount of dollars, based on statistics, here's how much you can expect in return. Where his has always been a little just more, we just want someone to, we want to elevate the experience of someone coming into a place.
Okay.
And so it was kind of unique to me. I'll have to admit, early on, I was kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure about this idea. But eventually, he was very confident in it. He said that hey, I'm going to move forward. I really want you to be my partner. He is more of the, I think I mentioned it, ideas and such. I do more of like the numbers and
Right.
forecasting. So we work really, really well together.
That is
It's a
good.
very nice balance. If we were both me, we probably wouldn't get anywhere. And we were both Vince.
But that's where our friendship works
Right.
so well
Yeah.
too, because Vince and I are very similar, and you and Laura are very similar.
Oh,
Yeah.
So
cool.
That's
it
really
works
cool.
out well in
That
our
is
That's
so cool.
fun.
in our life.
Wow.
life partner. They're like our life partners, as
That
it
is
were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Aw.
awesome.
It's
I love that.
It's
so
a rare.
much.
It's
Yeah,
a
great.
rare thing, I think,
Yeah.
we have with their family.
So you've done so much business. What is because I know there's so many people at our school who are like, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to do my own thing. Do you have any advice for any of those people?
I would say it's a good idea if you to work in a place that gain some experience someplace and not. I think that early on I like the idea of I want to quit what I'm doing so that I can go start something. But I think that this has had a lot of success, but I didn't leave my job to start this. I was able to work my job and then allow this to start growing to kind of see what it was going to do. And same with the other things. So when something didn't go well, it was like, well, I still have my job, right?
Right.
Once I started seeing that, hey, this is a thing. This is really starting to grow, starting to take off. I was able to kind of set this point of like, okay, once we reach here, I feel comfortable leaving my full-time
you
job
have that security.
and going into this full-time.
Have you had any moments of just doubt or like a lack of confidence in yourself or the business to truly take off and be secure?
Early on,
Probably early on
Yeah.
a little bit. I would say that once this got going, I kind of
You could tell.
You could tell. So like on other things, I think I have felt that like I don't know this is gonna this is really gonna work, and we're trying it, and it's you have these some ups and downs, but I'm just not really sure. But with the scent effect, it pretty much at the time that I came on board full time, I could tell that hey this is really something. This is really starting to take off.
cool.
but it was still a little scary. It was
Most
a little scary
definitely,
to quit a. I mean, we we really relied on the Lord for that. And there kind of came to this point where he was working his other job and he was working this, and Mr. Melott, being high integrity that he is, it kind of came to the point where there was no choice but for him to quit the other job to keep his integrity level high.
Yeah.
And so
I was like burning up vacation days with my other job because like
He
I
was
need to take
losing
some
all his
time off
days.
so that I can go do.
And when it came to the point where you don't have any more, I was like, okay, well, we have to make this leap of faith, and we just have to trust God in that, because we know that he would call us to this highest integrity and to live like him more than he would to have
great.
a successful job. So it was a little scary, but not real. I mean, we had confidence, but it was also like you've been at this last job for 15 years. It's a big deal.
that was
You're
the
not going to be
scary
there
part,
anymore. Yeah.
Where did you work?
So I worked for a digital marketing company called Hibu, Hibu, and websites and Google Ads and Facebook marketing.
Okay, so was that all online, or did you go into an office for that?
During the really early on, I went into an office, and then but then it kind of turned into as a lot of things did. It kind of as you kind of start figuring out that you can do a lot of this business without having to go into an office. It became more online, me working from home.
Okay, so Mrs. Melott, what have you been doing the last 20 years?
The last 20 years, wow.
What you been up to?
So we've been married 23 this month, 23 years. So let me think about this. So when I married Mr. Melott, he was a musician. I mean, that's what he did. That's what he proposed to me. We literally looked at his calendar and we said, oh, look, you have a weekend off in 9 weeks. Let's get married then. So that's what we did. We got married. We were married for 3 days, and then he was off on the road for 6 months. For 6 weeks. And in that 6 weeks, the band broke up, surprising all of us. And so he had been a musician for years. And so I had my college degree. He did not have his at that point. And so I had a job, and he continued to do music. he did some producing. He did some managing of other things. But I worked. And then when my oldest, we have 5 daughters, and when our oldest had just turned 5, we really felt like God was calling me to stay home. That was another really scary moment, because it was like, he did music, and it was really
see all these markers
volatile.
Of leaps of faith
along the way, absolutely. But we both, we really
I remember thinking but you're the breadwinner. How can you stay home with the kids?
Right,
if I'm
right.
playing,
You've heard of a starving artist.
Right. That's what it was. But we were like, no, that's what God's calling us to, so we'll do it. So it was a big leap of faith that way. And then I had just been home a few months when I felt like God called me to homeschool. So I homeschooled my kids for, a long time. And then they started doing CYT, Christian Youth Theater. And when they started doing Christian Youth Theater, I started helping out there and working as a class coordinator there, and kind of moved up. But on the same day that I was planning on leaving as an employee at Christian Youth Theater, the exact same day, Mrs. Margie Pryor called me and asked me if I would consider being the student council advisor at Grace Preparatory Academy. She's like, I think you can do both jobs. And I said, well, actually, I think I could just do that job. And so she said, oh, well, if that's the case, then would you also teach speech? So I was like, well, I think I could do that. So I've been...
How long have you been teaching speech?
So that would have been, I started in 2016. Is when I started working at Grace Preparatory Academy. I had 1 year when we were still at First Baptist. And then we moved here the next school year.
Wow.
So, yes.
Right on.
Okay, what did you get your college degree in?
So my degree is in biomedical science.
Wow.
From Texas A&M. Yes. It's not speech and student council related at all.
I know.
Not at all. So it was really, actually early on, probably 2 or 3 years in, they were needing a biology teacher, and I was going to take the job, and then I started having nightmares about lesson plans, and I was like, oh, I don't think I want to do that. I didn't know what that entailed, and it was kind of scary to me. But then when the anatomy and physiology came up, I was like, that's something that I feel like I can, that was more along my degree, and so I felt comfortable.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Wow.
I still don't love lesson plans. Like I remember being in college and having friends who were education majors and thinking I would never want to be an education major. But here I am as a teacher. Well,
okay, that
I just thought
me
that
about
was
you.
Well, first of all, I never wanted to teach people how to read. So I thought, a kindergarten teacher would be the worst job. So then when God called me to homeschool, I was like, Lord, you have a sense of humor, because this is the thing I never wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
And so, but he, he equips. If he
Yeah.
calls you to something, he'll equip you.
Yeah,
for it. So,
absolutely.
Why did you
You're
choose
right.
to major in
biomedical science.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So I thought that I wanted to be a physician's assistant.
Okay.
I had lots of plans for myself. I thought that's what I wanted to be. But at the time, again, those 1900s, the majority of physician's assistant schools were tied to the military. So you had to, if you were being accepted, it was probably because you were in the military. Because actually being a PA was really more of it started off in the military. And so, and I did not want to go the military route. So, and then I just decided I didn't want to go to school anymore at all.
So what did you do with the biomedical degree?
So my most interesting and I felt probably most rewarding job with that was I worked for the Texas Organ Sharing Alliance, and we were the organization that coordinated organ donors for in South Texas for those who needed transplants.
Wow.
And organ donors in a deceased cadaver organ donor, not a living donor situation. So it was education. It was educating physicians and nursing staff on the potential for organ donation. It was talking to families about the opportunity for their loved one to be able to be an organ donor for someone else. And so it was hard, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But it was also rewarding to see the other end of that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it was an interesting. I don't even remember how I got the job. That was when we moved back, and I was just looking for a job. And I was like, oh, that sounds along the biomedical science.
Move back.
So,
What?
well, I moved to Amarillo when we got married.
Uh-huh.
We had lived here, and he
Still
lived in
the
Amarillo.
headquarters of where our band,
Okay.
our band was based out of.
Okay.
So I moved to Amarillo for like 6 months. It wasn't very long at all. And then
You came
So
back here.
did you grow up in New Braunfels?
I did not grow up in New Braunfels. I grew up in Houston, but my parents unfortunately separated when I was my first year in college, and my mom moved here. And so after I graduated from A&M, I moved to the area.
Okay.
Right
That's
on.
cool.
Yeah.
Right on.
Okay, I want to know,
Yes.
was your degree worth it? You majored in STEM. This sounds like a horribly difficult degree. And at Texas A&M.
It was. I liked to have fun at A&M, so I was really more of the social.
Okay.
So I did like student government, and I did transfer camp counselor, and I did that
Aw.
stuff, and I loved going to Texas A&M. It was a lot of fun. So my grades weren't as great as they probably could have been had I had a little more.
Really?
I mean, they were fine. I mean, I graduated, right? And so it was fine. But I probably enjoyed the social aspect of college more than I enjoyed the learning. But I definitely think it was worth it because I love teaching now. I love having the opportunity to teach in a biblical worldview centered school where we don't just talk about the science of it, but we can talk about how amazing our Creator is
Yeah,
and the way He
absolutely.
designed us. So I love that
really
part
cool.
of it. Mm-hmm.
Did you face hearing the opposite perspective at A&M?
You know, I don't know that I really did. I mean, I don't know back then.
Maybe not as
back then,
prevalent as.
I don't know that it was. I mean, it wasn't taught from a biblical worldview, but it wasn't taught from an anti-biblical
Right.
worldview either.
That's
like
good.
which I think is probably more common in universities today. But no, I didn't face that so
good to
much.
hear.
It was yes, absolutely. And A&M could be different, but it seems like it'd probably be one of the schools that would hopefully be the last to
Yeah, it does seem
take
that
that
way.
take that
Yeah.
route.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about y'all's family life.
Yes.
Y'all have twins
Yes,
that were prematurely born.
absolutely.
What was that situation like? Scary? Were you guys like, everything's gonna be fine, God's got us? Like, what did that look like for y'all?
Yeah. I mean, that was maybe the moment when that kind of happened. So growing up, I put my trust in Jesus for the forgiveness of my sins at around 13 or 14 years old, like at a church camp. Now, did my life really reflect? Was the fruit there? Was the evidence of my salvation there at that point? If you ask my friends, then I'm not sure that they would say that they really saw that in me. So I think that, and then being a musician, a lot of my life was geared towards my identity being wrapped up in that, right? You know, I wanted to be recognized as, this guy's he's talented, he's a good songwriter, he's a good band leader, whatever it is. That was probably what I wanted people to know the most about me at that point. So when you ask about, putting our trust there, or trusting God in that situation, I think that situation was what led us, I think by God's grace, that this was the time when He revealed to us that, hey, I've got you regardless of what the outcome is.
Wow.
Okay, yes, maybe obviously we're praying that we would have these two girls, but I think we both came to a realization at that point that we're not in control of this.
We're not, yeah.
And so
And we would probably both admit that we, not really a conscious thing, but subconsciously we just kind of lived our lives as if we were in control of our own lives, right? And so in God's mercy, really early on in our marriage, He was like, and by the way, you're not. And you can acknowledge that you're not in control, and you can acknowledge me as in control of your life, or you can just make it really hard for yourself. And so it was like, okay, yeah.
So I feel like that was the time we were probably, Jesus became the center of our lives, I think,
Really?
at that point, to where it was, hey, regardless of the outcome, He is still God. He's still good. He still loves us. If the outcome isn't what we want it to be, He's still good.
What? How did you get to that point? Like, how was it both of you were coming to this point in your life?
I mean, God had it that way. But it's interesting because many times from the time they were born till probably just 2 years ago, I didn't necessarily. I'd always said, well, I acknowledge Jesus as my Savior, but not really as my Lord until about that time, right? Yeah. But it didn't fully make sense to me that I didn't. I still I didn't want to go to hell, and so I trusted what Christ did on the cross and His resurrection. But I didn't want to give my life. I didn't want to repent from just being in charge of my life until that point. And so I often said that it was that in His goodness and His. I mean, it didn't seem good at the time. It seemed really, really hard.
It was a long period of
really hard.
Them being born really, really early.
Yeah.
23 weeks and 5 days.
Oh my goodness!
They were 1 pound 2 ounces and 1 pound 4 ounces.
Oh my gosh.
So it was pretty. Yeah, it was a scary time, and every day was ups and downs. There was like, hey, they're doing a little better today, and then we'd get a call in the middle of the night. You guys need to come up here. We're not sure how. So and that was just ongoing. During that phase in our life, it's hard to kind of even remember something like that. But
right. And then just retrospectively, just seeing how merciful, like he not only drew us to Himself, but He allowed them to live. Where He could have either He could have allowed them to live, and that would have been merciful. He could have drawn us to Himself, and that would have been merciful. But the fact that He did both, was so merciful. To allow us to have. I mean, and what's even a better gift is that both of them love the Lord. Like they, and so it's just truly.
God is good.
God is really good. I mean, He's good in the hard situations. And He's good in the really high mountaintop situations.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's so powerful.
It is powerful.
That's good. That's good. Well, y'all now have a daughter who's all the way up in Italy. How, that whole distance dynamic, that's crazy. Literally having a kid halfway across the world. How does that make y'all feel as parents?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it goes back to just early on in our marriage, Him teaching us that He's good no matter what happens. I mean, He's given us so many opportunities in our 23 years to have to fully trust Him. And it's like, okay, this is really hard. I mean, and Scott being the protector and provider, of our family. A girl dad. I mean, I can't imagine how hard that must be for him, because it's hard for me as the mom, to just have to relinquish. Again, I mean, God He's like, you trust me? You going to give me control? Do you realize that I love her more than you do? Like, all those things went through my mind when we left her. I mean, I cried a lot. He can tell the story how I cried at every single.
The night that she, didn't stay with us and went to her dorm for the first time, she's like crying like a baby. And then the night, we still got to see her the next day. Right. But then she said goodbye to her, and then she started crying again. And then we get a taxi cab, and like, I'm driving away from her now, and then we get to the airport like, this is it.
Flying
This
away
is.
from her
I'm leaving the city that she's in, and then we would get to the next layover like, I'm never going to be on the same continent with her. I'm leaving that continent now.
It was hard, but it was. I mean, it was just a test of faith. You know, just a. You know, we can't.
And she's so Bonnie is I see a lot of Jessica in Bonnie, and you know, Jessica has an adventurous spirit, and Bonnie does too. And so I think it made it not easy, but a little easier for me in that I just, you know, I know how she, you know, she likes the adventure and the experience and the, you know, being someplace. And so I kind of felt like you know, more so than her older sisters, at least at the, you know, at that age, just kind of had I feel like she would do well in this situation.
Yeah.
So that's comforting too. You know.
That's cool.
And it doesn't mean that she hasn't had, I'm sure, times of like, what am I doing? You know, should I, you know, but no, she's done a great job there and
Yeah, she has.
navigating it well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Impressive.
She's going to a church that they only speak Italian.
Oh my goodness.
Goodness.
So she found a friend who is a believer there, and finding friends who are believers in Italy is difficult.
Really?
But she found one who goes to an all Italian speaking church, and so she's gone with her multiple occasions, and we're like, that's brave. I mean, that's brave to go to a church that you don't even necessarily learn the language, but you're going to learn the language if you.
Yeah. How is she doing with knowing Italian?
She's doing great.
Yeah, she probably. I mean, I'm sure wants to be further along than what she is.
But we're impressed.
Just because she's, you know, she's always she strives to excel in everything. And,
Oh yeah.
And but I'm sure that, you know, that if someone or just someone around her just observing would be like, this is great for the
First semester.
3 months that you've been here. I'm sure she's doing really, really good.
Yeah.
That's really special. Is she teaching y'all any?
Well, no.
Not me.
She speaks. Well, she ordered for it when I went a couple weeks ago. She ordered for us in Italian.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I tried to pick up and do it myself. And I was like, no, you just do it. So she's good. She's doing good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What has been some of the proudest moments as parents?
Have y'all seen the picture of Mr. Melott the day that JoJo and Lucy graduated?
No.
No.
I'll need to share that. You'll need to put that on the podcast.
Okay.
It
We
makes
can
me
do that.
cry. It
We
makes
can
me
do
cry.
that.
So the twins, they graduated from Grace Prep, but they graduated in 2020, right?
Yeah.
And so the fact that they were able to pull off this really extraordinarily cool graduation. So for those who don't know, in 2020, the graduation was at Stars and Stripes Drive-In Theater, and it was really cool. And there's this one picture. But they had classic cars driving the kids up, and then the kids would, in the classic car, they'd come up and then they'd walk up this aisle. I mean, it was just really cool. And there's this picture of Mr. Melott, like just the pride on his face, like when they were walking down. It's like, it's weird. Like, I don't know. You'll have to ask your parents about it if they've already graduated a kid or if they are going to, like, there's just this moment of like,
It's a neat moment.
like, wow. And maybe it was, you know, I don't know. It's like, wow, that like we all did this together, you know, like they did it, but we did it. We all did it. And it's just like this kind of, I don't know.
That's
So that was a
special.
super proud.
Yeah.
That was a super proud.
But there's so
moment.
many.
You know, there's.
like,
I mean,
we-
that's
like,
one of them.
I bet.
There's
with
like
with five girls, and they're all unique, right?
Right.
And there's just you know, JoJo and Lucy graduating, Bonnie, the way she works so hard at things, and you know, she was valedictorian last year at Grace Prep. Lily, she's like a just the maturity that she has at her age, and like I have great biblical and gospel conversations with her. Like the way she thinks about things that way. Saroja, just how brave she was coming in from, you know, she was adopted, and the way that she, you know, that wasn't taught. It was just how she was wired, and she just kind of had this this bravery to come into a new family. So.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I would be proud of your family. I am proud of your family.
You're
I've
sweet.
told Lily so many times I'm like the biggest Melott fan.
Thank you.
But,
Thank you.
how did y'all decide to adopt? I don't know that story.
Okay, well, so Lily actually told me, hey, sometimes we try to pull out these life lessons in the podcast. And I was like, oh, I can think of a good life lesson with the situation. So because the twins were born early, and then I had some complications during pregnancy and stuff. And so my doctor, after the twins, kind of encouraged me to, like, maybe you need to be done having kids. And I was like, not real happy with that. And then after Bonnie, he was like, maybe you should be done with having kids. So then when we got pregnant with Lily, I was like, oh, I guess we're done having children. And so Mr. Melott and I had this fun little for no more chant, right? And so we think, oh, the Lord must have thought we were so funny, right? Like, oh, look how cute Scott and Jessica are with their little for no more. Like, haven't they learned by now? They're not in control. And so it was actually the Kegleys, what a surprise, who came to us and told us they were going to be adopting. And we were like, wow, that's like incredible. And we want to do whatever we can to support you guys. And we, how can we support you financially? How can we support other families who are adopting financially? How did your mom played a part in that with the Chosen, marathon? We helped the Kegleys get teams together. The whole thing. And then Mrs. Kegley, she had introduced me to a bunch of blogs. Do y'all remember what those are? Blogs. Yes. For families who were also adopting. And so I started following the blogs, and it was just like, wow, just crazy. And so as I'm reading these blogs and really investing myself in these complete strangers who were going to get their children, I started feeling like, oh, are we supposed to do more than financially support? Like, is there something else we're supposed to do? But knowing that the Holy Spirit wouldn't tell me that and not tell Scott that, I just kept quiet and waited and waited for Scott to, like, because I knew if that's what it's supposed to be, he wouldn't just give that to me. He'd give it, like, we both have it. And so very vividly, I remember we had gone on this trip, like just to Bandera. Like we had like a little family trip to Bandera. And there was a little girl who was obviously adopted there, and she was like eating s'mores or something. And Mr. Melott made some sort of comment, and I can't even remember exactly the comment you made, but I was like, I started crying because I was like, I've been waiting for you to also feel this, like I knew at that point we felt the same thing.
I think I just remember, and I don't remember exactly, but it was just this, like, there are little boys and girls that will never experience just, this carefree sitting at the campfire with chocolate on their face and just eating, eating this, and that's, I think, when I first started thinking that maybe more than just, any sort of help for for adoption and foster care is, I think, important. But I think at that point when we felt like, maybe we're called to do more than just help financially.
Right. Wow. Right. And so we brought it up to the girls, and just really Scott said, "What do you think that the Lord has blessed us with?" And they were all really young, and they were like, "Our house, our family, mommy's cooking." They were just kind of, and so he took up this was one Sunday before church. He asked them this. They wrote it on cards. He took it all up, and because at this point we're already thinking, I think this is not but the Lord's calling us to this. And so, but we have to get everyone on board. I mean, adoption doesn't just affect mom and dad, And so that night he said, well, what would be the best way to share this?
Out of the abundance that God has given us,
how can we share? And so we kind of explained it, and they were all like, okay. I mean, not that they were all excited about it, but they were all, they all understood that. And then it was just this really long process of adopting her. But I mean, if there is one thing that we learned with adoption in the waiting moment, we would get pictures of Saroja. Like I remember the first day that we got this little, hey, this is the little girl we have for you. What do you think? And they sent us this picture of her, and Mr. Melott wasn't home, and I was like, you gotta get home. He's like, you can't look at it till I get home, and I'm like, okay, but hurry up, come home. and so we get this picture, and we read all about her, and we're like, yeah, she look, we that's who the Lord has. And one thing I think we can say is that we've prayed that, Lord, shut this door. If this is not where we're supposed to be walking, we're gonna walk this way unless you shut the door. And so we just kind of walked that way. And but there were times when we sent her this book. Like we had to put this book together so she'd have pictures of us. But like this whole time we knew of her, we got pictures, we got reports, and she didn't know. Like she didn't know we were coming.
Yeah. I remember like having a picture of her on my phone and having like a coworker, that's just so amazing. You have this picture on your phone of this little girl, and it just kind of struck me, and it was a great way to share the gospel, or share just the way that we love her so much. She has no idea who we are. It's like this picture of God loving us while we're still sinners. Before we knew Him. He has
He's coming. He's moving He's moving earth mountains. He'll give.
Wow.
He'll do whatever he has to do to get to us, and we have no idea that he's doing that.
Yeah.
At
Right?
this point, Saroja, I've got a picture of her, but she has no idea
Yeah.
who we are.
And it's really humbling.
Yeah.
Like that was like we felt like that was one of the clearest pictures of the gospel for us, tangibly, that we've had.
That is so special. Yeah.
in our life.
Wow. That's good.
That
That's
is so
good.
sweet.
And then he shows you like she probably, because she had this on her own for the first several years of her life. I mean, she was in an orphanage, but like there's a little pushback, and it's just a continuous picture of like how we push back against God. Like, no, we want what's best for you. Oh, I just want to fight you on this. It's just this whole he just really lays it out.
Yeah.
Super good. It's why it says biblically that we're that he adopted us. I mean, it's like it's really true.
It really is.
I mean, it's really true.
That is so special. I just love your whole life and your family life story is just like this picture of continually surrendering yourselves and your plans and like what you want to do to the Lord. That is so special.
It's
And
a continuous.
Like you've prospered.
Well,
it's like.
I mean, we always say, in spite of us,
Oh.
in spite of us, the Lord's just good, and that and there's been really hard, and in the really, really hard stuff, he gently reminds us, I'm sovereign. I'm in control. I'm not taken by surprise. You may be taken by surprise, but I'm not.
That's such a powerful example to, my generation. Like everybody in my generation wants to have control. Like they're just like, no, my life is mine, and that's it. And like y'all are here telling us, like, no, your life is God's. Like, give it up to Him,
right?
Because He's gonna bless you.
Yeah. And we don't know what that blessing even looks like. I mean, it could be. It could end up being hard after hard after hard, because we're not guaranteed any sort of blessings here in Christ,
Exactly.
But you can find the joy. But you find that there's joy even in the hard.
Yeah.
Even if it's not, like that's the blessing.
Yeah.
Is that you can find joy even in that.
I think that's a good way to end it right there.
All
Good
right.
way to put it.
There's joy even in the
Joy even in the hardness.
Yeah.
That's good.
Wow.
That's good. Well, thank you so much for coming
Absolutely.
on.
Thank you.
Nice.
Deuces. Y'all should say deuces too. Hold up.
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Deuces.
Let's go. W ending.
I'm like, look at me. Somebody say it.